This is the story of the murder case that took everybody by surprise when a schoolgirl went missing and was later found dead with her corpse shredded into kebab meat. On November 1, 2003, Charlene Downes went missing from her hometown of Blackpool, Lancashire. She was only 14 years old at the time. Since then, nearly 2 decades had passed, yet authorities are still far from solving her murder case. Following Charlene's disappearance, the police initially thought she might have been a runaway teenager, but it quickly became apparent that something more horrible had happened to the unfortunate girl. She was last seen in November 2003, and it was later discovered that she had suffered from sexual assault in the vicinity of that location. According to police investigations, takeout workers had groomed at least 60 schoolgirls for prostitution. They would ply their teenage victims with cigarettes, liquor, and food in exchange for providing sexual services. Although Lancashire police declared in 2006 that Charlene had been murdered, yet the search for her body has not yielded any results nearly 20 years after her disappearance. Karen, Charlene's mother, last saw her around 7:15 p.m. on November 1, 2003. At the Church Street bus station, where Charlene was heading to the town center to meet friends, Karen said farewell to her daughter with a kiss. Charlene assured her she wouldn't be late for home, and she was heading to the arcade. After meeting up with her friend, they strolled along the promenade in the direction of the Carousel pub on North Pier. Then, shortly after 9 o'clock at night, Charlene is seen on CCTV with a woman wearing a 3/4-length black coat outside the Blackpool bar on Talbot Road. Charlene's family filed a missing persons report after she didn't come home the following day. Over 4,800 witness statements were taken by Lancashire police officers, and 10,500 lines of inquiry were established over the course of the investigation. Despite a £100,000 prize, the case is still unresolved after 20 years. Finally, in 2007, Ayad Albatiki, the owner of a takeout, was alleged of murdering her, along with co-worker Mohammed Raveshi, who was accused of assisting in the disposal of her body. The jury was informed during their trial how Charlene's body had been dismembered and sliced into kebabs at the Funny Boys fast food restaurant in Blackpool. It seemed as if Charlene had been targeted because of the dark secret she was believed to be hiding. However, following the jury's failure to reach a verdict, the charges against the 2 men were dropped. Lancashire police reissued their appeal to provide details regarding her whereabouts on the 13th anniversary of Charlie's disappearance. In 2016, Detective Superintendent Andy Webster declared, "We are as determined as ever to find her killer or killers, even though it has been 13 years since Charlene's disappearance." In 2017, police also detained and questioned 2 males for alleged prior sexual assaults. However, they clarified that there was no evidence pointing directly to Charlene. The only CCTV footage of her on the day she disappeared was eventually made public by detectives that year after it had been lying untouched on police shelves. Since then, as an inquiry into the breach of duty had been launched, the family of Charlene has criticized the police for a juxtaposed investigation. In July 2017, Karen filed a lawsuit against the police department, demanding a public apology. In November 2017, the police watchdog IPCC transferred the case to the Professional Standards Department of the Force and the Lancashire Police Commissioner. The tragic case was revisited in 2019 by the Channel 5 program Vanished: The Murder of Charlene Downes, with the goal of uncovering fresh leads. With the discovery of her younger brother's death in 2021, the Charlene family experienced even more despair. After complaining of feeling ill, 30-year-old Robert Downes's body was discovered in a pool of blood at his Blackpool home on December 4th. Robert, a father of 4, had accompanied his dad to a football game at the Bloomfield Road Stadium in Blackpool FC, where he was employed as a steward. But not long after getting there, Robert claimed to be sick and departed. The last time he was seen alive was when he got home at 6:30 p.m. and briefly dozed off in an upstairs bedroom. Later, His father found him unconscious and covered in blood on his bedroom floor at home. Robert was declared dead at the scene by paramedics who were sent to the house. His death did not appear to be suspicious. Faith Hedgepeth would have been the first member of her family to graduate from college. She was an honor student in high school, and, because of her academic excellence, she was awarded a Gates Millennium Scholarship to attend UNC Chapel Hill. She was passionate about aiding children and aspired to work as a pediatrician in the future. However, just a few weeks before turning 20, in the early morning hours on September 7, 2012, the UNC Chapel Hill Jr. tragically lost her life after being bludgeoned to death. Faith, a member of the Haliwa-Saponi Native American tribe, was born on September 26, 1992, in Warren County, North Carolina, which is a part of the tribe's traditional place of origin. Her parents were Roland and Connie Hedgepeth. She was raised in Hollister, a tiny community bordering Warren and Halifax counties. Faith, in the words of Roland Hedgepeth, is pure bliss. She was a blessing as she arrived at a difficult time in my life. She kept me going. She was my faith. Faith's parents divorced shortly after her birth, and her father relocated to Hickory, North Carolina, which is roughly 4 hours away. Although Faith had a close relationship with her father, she lived with her mother Connie and her older sister Rolanda Hedgepeth, who helped in raising her. For Faith, Rolanda, who was 18 when her sister was born, was like having a second mother. I helped take care of her right from the start, she claimed. People treated her as if she was my child everywhere we went, and I felt the same too. As an honor student, cheerleader, and participant in numerous extracurricular activities, Faith excelled in high school. Deeply rooted in the Carolinas, Faith had no doubts about her choice of college when it came time to apply. The University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. She even got accepted to the esteemed university on the extremely competitive Gates Millennium Scholarship. Her father had also attended UNC Chapel Hill, but had dropped out after marrying Connie and raising a family. Roland stated that the girl, a native of North Carolina, was determined about attending Chapel Hill School and knew exactly where she wanted to go. Faith planned to continue her education and pursue a career in pediatrics when she started her third year at UNC. According to Connie, Faith's mother, all she wanted to do was help people, especially kids. It was her passion. However, she told me that she considered becoming a teacher after she started experiencing difficulties in school. I assured her that everything was possible for her if she set her mind to it, and that the world was open to her. On Sunday, September 2, 2012, Connie had her final interaction with her daughter. After Faith's waitressing shift at Red Robin in Durham, she and her roommate, Karina Rosario, headed to Warren County to join the family in celebrating Connie's birthday in advance. "We were just relaxing and having fun with the family," Connie stated. "I had no idea that my world was about to turn upside down." Faith contacted me on my birthday on Tuesday to wish me a happy birthday. That was the last time I spoke to my baby girl. That following week, on Wednesday, Faith spoke with her father as well. She texted him to let him know that she was going to be joining the Native American Alpha Pi Omega chapter at UNC. Roland remarked, "It's like she always knew the right time to text me. She would always sense it." "What's wrong, Dad?" she inquired. Then I told her what was going on, and she advised me to just have faith. The thing about her was that she was always thinking about other people. She possessed this beauty within as well as on the surface, of course. She never failed to give me the impression that I was the most special person alive. It was the last conversation Roland was going to have with his daughter. Faith passed away a little more than 24 hours later. On Thursday, September 6th, at around 6 o'clock in the evening, Faith went to an Alpha Pi Omega Rush event, according to Assistant Chapel Hill Police Chief Celisa Lehue. Later, she and her roommate, Karina, headed to the UNC campus's Davis Library to study. Following several hours of studying, Faith and Karina returned to their shared off-campus apartment located on Durham's historic Chapel Hill Road. That evening, sometime after midnight, they left the flat once again. The girls can be seen entering the now-closed downtown Chapel Hill nightclub, The Thrill, on security footage. Due to its policy of allowing guests under the legal drinking age of 21 to dance, the club quickly gained popularity among college students. After telling the security that she felt sick to her stomach, Karina decided to head home. Faith and Karina are seen leaving the club at 2:30 in the morning on the surveillance footage. A neighbor reported to the police that she heard the girl moving about, and that they had arrived home at the Durham flat by 3 in the morning. Records indicate that someone had accessed Faith's Facebook profile at around the same time. Lihue corroborated that Karina left the flat about an hour later with a friend who arrived to pick her up. She knew Faith was in her bed before she left. According to the police, the door hadn't been locked. When Faith didn't answer when Karina tried to call her the following morning for a ride home, Karina contacted another friend. Lihue said that when they got to the apartment, Faith was lying dead, partially naked while wrapped in a comforter that had been on the bed. Lihue noted that there was a substantial quantity of blood in the vicinity and that Faith seemed to have had a serious head injury. The later released 911 call states that Karina reported to the operator that she discovered Faith unconscious in the bedroom. When asked if Faith was breathing, Karina responded, "I don't know. I don't think so. There is blood all over the place." When Faith's mother, Connie, received the call, she was in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, at work. Connie told Dateline, "They told me Faith is gone. I didn't believe her." How is Faith dead? I inquired as to whether it might have been an accident, but that was not the case. That didn't make any sense. It abruptly dawned on me. As soon as I hung up the phone, I burst into tears. Although Connie was shocked, she knew she had to convey the terrible news to Faith's father as well as to her brother and sister. For Faith's family, the days, weeks, and even months that followed were like a fog. For 2 years, the police investigation continued. Days before Faith's murder's second anniversary in 2014, Durham County court officials revealed records related to the search for her killer. It was disclosed what her family already knew in the autopsy report, which was also made public at that time. Faith had died from a head injury caused by blunt force. In addition, blood under her fingernails and scratches and bruises on her wrists and legs were mentioned in the report. Investigators believe an empty Bacardi rum bottle was used as the murder weapon. DNA and pieces of tissue were detected on the bottle, which was discovered in the bedroom. A fast food bag containing a written note that said, "I am not stupid," was also found in the bedroom next to Faith's body. According to the investigators, every piece of evidence they gather adds to the jigsaw of piecing together the whole event. We continually review and don't leave any evidence unaccounted for. Combining DNA from the site and semen from a sexual assault kit, a DNA profile was developed. The DNA is thought to belong to the murderer, according to investigators. Chris Blue, the head of Chapel Hill Police, stated at a press conference in 2014. Authorities and relatives surmise that Faith was probably acquainted with the person or people responsible for her death. But, due to Faith's gregarious and outgoing nature, they also learned she had a wide network of connections that spanned the whole college campus. Faith had never met a stranger, according to Faith's father, Roland. She was hilarious, goofy, much like me, and a pleasure to be around. She was everybody's friend. Several people of interest were reportedly questioned, but were subsequently cleared when it was discovered that their DNA did not match that of the scene. More than 100 individuals' DNA has been reviewed, and almost 2,000 people have been questioned, but nearly 8 years later, there is still no match. Assistant Chief of Police Lihue stated, "We continue to use all tools that are available to us. We were unable to identify a single clue that might have resulted in an arrest. Until Faith's family receives the justice they deserve, we won't give up." Lihue stated that the department possesses substantial evidence in the case, The question is not if the case will be solved, but rather when. Lee Hugh stated, "It will be solved because we are continuously reviewing the case file, following up on leads, and utilizing new technology and evidence procedures." Although she thinks the agency is making a lot of effort to solve the case, Faith's sister Rolanda told Dateline that she didn't anticipate it would take 8 years. "Nothing ever prepares you for this," she said. "Her sweet little voice calling me Ro is something I miss. Even though so much time has passed, I still hope that we will find that closure. I'm always optimistic." Faith's father worries that as time passes, the real story of what really happened to his daughter may remain uncovered. He remarked, "I feel like we're getting further away from knowing why someone would do this to her with each passing year instead of getting closer." With the establishment of the Faith Hedgepeth Memorial Scholarship, Faith's legacy continues even after she passed away. The purpose of the scholarship is to support a Native American woman from a tribe in North Carolina in her pursuit of a higher education. According to Connie, in the years following Faith's death, 22 $1,000 scholarships have been granted. Without bond, he is being held at the Durham County Detention Center. Olivares was not considered a suspect at the start of the investigation, according to the assistant police chief. Later on, the DNA from the semen samples taken from the crime scene and that of Salguero Olivares's matched. Additionally, the authorities revealed in 2016 a DNA profile sketch made by Parabon Nano Labs that matched his features. After the arrest, Salguero Olivares' mother stated that her son didn't go to UNC in Chapel Hill or have any friends there. "My son is not a killer. I believe in my son," she stated. "I believe him." He claimed that he was unfamiliar of the girl. Following the news of the suspect's arrest, Faith's mother, Connie Hedgepeth, made a statement. "Upon receiving the news this morning, all I could do was sob and offer thanks and praise to God." Attorney General Josh Stein of North Carolina stated that thousands of interviews were done as part of the investigation by police detectives and SBI investigators. He expressed gratitude to SBI and the Chapel Hill Police Department for their efforts on the case. "I wept. But they were tears of joy, tears of relief that someone had been taken into custody," according to Connie Hedgepeth. The horrific murder of Randi Trimble was reported to the authorities when her husband Brian Trimble dialed 911 and reported that he had discovered his wife unconscious and bleeding in their Cumberland County, Pennsylvania home. When the police got there, they discovered Randi's body with strangulation marks and multiple stab wounds, while Brian stood there, acting completely insane. Investigation Discovery's American Monster, Appalachian horror film, details the horrific killing and demonstrates how a swift and effective police investigation quickly revealed a dark, vengeful, and devious plot. Randi and Brian married in the year 2000 and had a perfectly blissful life at first. The couple's friends regarded their devotion and commitment with great esteem, and they were well liked in society. Unfortunately, things took a sharp turn for the worse, as the multiple sclerosis patient Brian detested the way his condition interfered with his day-to-day activities. The television program notes that the main causes of the breakdown between the two were Brian's illness and Randi's nature to be overprotective of her spouse. Though their marriage appeared to be in disarray, none could have imagined what would happen in January 2003. On January 10th, Randi was supposed to stay at home while Brian Trimble had dinner plans. When Brian returned, he walked into the house and was startled to find Randi's dead body on the garage floor. He called 911 right away, When the cops arrived, they discovered that Randi had already passed away. Multiple stab wounds were discovered during the initial examination, and an autopsy subsequently concluded that these wounds were the cause of death. When questioned, Brian maintained that he did not touch the body and that he immediately dialed 911 after finding it. Regretfully, after a thorough search, the police were unable to locate any forensic evidence that would have given them a useful lead. They were suspicious of Brian's actions, though, as they did not align with the bereavement of a loved one. The absence of forensic evidence caused the investigation to get off to a prolonged pace. Furthermore, no eyewitnesses were present to provide authorities with a description of the offender. Despite the fact that the police learned that Brian and Randi had a troubled marriage, the husband's precise alibi demonstrated that he was not in the house when the murder took place. But the police were still short on leads, so they decided to pay a visit to Brian to relive the events of that tragic day. Upon meeting with officials once again, Brian appeared very cooperative, yet he continued to contradict his initial assertion. At first, Brian had stated that he did not even touch Randi's body when he discovered it. Rather, he called 911 right away. He afterwards asserted, nevertheless, that he did touch her once to check if she wakes up. The police decided to closely monitor Brian as a result of this inconsistency, which started to plant suspicion in their minds. Concurrently, a witness reported to the authorities that while Brian had originally sought a divorce, he had more recently stated that he and his wife are happy together. At work, Brian was close associates with Blaine Norris, according to the same witness. In an attempt to make Brian feel comfortable enough to confide in them, authorities then made the decision to make an attempt to become close to Brian. The play eventually paid off when Brian ultimately gave in to interrogation and admitted to plotting the murder along with Blaine Norris. He continued to elaborate that Randi's intervention forced them to abandon their initial plan of co-directing a horror film. This interference infuriated Brian, but Blaine went ahead and produced the film on his own, winding up in debt for $20,000, exactly what Brian had promised to reimburse him after killing Randi. The substantial life insurance payout that Brian stood to inherit after his wife's death, according to Brian, was the motive for killing her. Investigating this lead further, the police looked into Brian's computer and discovered that a detailed document on how to murder someone had been forwarded to Blaine. When Blaine was questioned, he denied any involvement, but when the police searched his home, they discovered an extensive collection of rifles, handguns, and knives. Although the murder weapon was never found, they came to the conclusion that Blaine was an expert in forensics and could have easily cleared the evidence from the crime scene. Furthermore, CCTV footage quickly refuted the alibi, regardless of his claim to have seen Blaine during the time of the murder. In light of Brian's confession and the potential motive to acquire $20,000, Blaine was apprehended and accused of killing Randi. Because of his involvement, Brian was also taken into custody and prosecuted. Randi Trimble entered a guilty plea to a charge of conspiracy to commit murder after being brought before the court. In 2004, Brian was given a life sentence in jail based on his plea. Conversely, prosecution intended to pursue the death penalty for Blaine Norris, but at the last minute, he made the decision to admit to the murder and enter a guilty plea, so avoiding the death penalty. Blaine was therefore found guilty of murder in 2004 and given a life sentence in prison. In the years after the sentence, Brian has made fruitless attempts to get his conviction overturned. He is still detained in SCI Benner Township in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. Blaine, too, remained unsuccessful in his plea to overturn his conviction and is currently detained at SCI Somerset in Somerset, Pennsylvania. After returning from an evening of soccer in April 2005, Raven Abaroa claimed to have witnessed a terrifying scene in his family's North Carolina house. He reported to the police that he had discovered his 25-year-old wife, Janet Abaroa, brutally stabbed to death in an upstairs office. Authorities stated that nothing else in the house was damaged, and the couple's 6-month-old son, Caden, was unharmed in a different room. At the moment, Raven Abaroa said to a 911 dispatcher, "She's been shot or something. Blood is all over the place." The suburban areas of Durham, North Carolina were enthralled with the mystery of Janet Abaroa's murder, which remained unsolved for many years. Born into a family of 10 siblings, Janet Christiansen was the 7th and was raised in a Mormon household. At Southern Virginia University, where she played soccer, she ran into fellow Mormon Raven Abaroa in 1998. He was also a soccer player and had won her over right away. She was attractive and gorgeous. During an interview conducted in 2007, Raven Abaroa stated, "I just felt so much comfort when I was with her. We then embarked on this incredible journey of getting to know one another." Janet and Raven Abaroa were married in August 2000 at a Mormon temple in Washington, D.C., following 2 years of courtship. They made their home in southeastern Virginia. The lives of the newlyweds seemed ideal to her friends and relatives. The pair went to Durham, North Carolina, shortly after their wedding due to a job opportunity, where they both accepted positions at a sporting goods company. The sisters of Janet Abaroa informed ABC News that the couple was starting to experience some marital issues at the time. A son is welcomed by the Abaroa family. According to Sonia Flood, Janet Abaroa's sister, he approached her one day because he wanted to end the marriage. He told her that he had been unfaithful to her with other women, and shortly after, she discovered she was expecting a child. It was supposed to be the happiest period in Janet and Raven Abaroa's life, but instead, Janet confided in her family that she felt helpless. Dina Kendall, Janet's elder sister, revealed to 2020 that Janet had no desire to raise the child independently. However, it appeared to family and friends that the young couple had made amends, and on October 17, 2004, they welcomed their son, Caden. He made a firm vow to her that he would never betray her, and that she was the only person he would ever love. He assured her that he would make it work. The Abaroa's marriage appeared to be improving with the birth of their son, but shortly thereafter, it took another setback. In December of 2004, Raven Abaroa was apprehended for stealing from the sportswear company where they were employed. Janet Abaroa quit her job in disgust. In the end, he entered a guilty plea to 5 counts of embezzlement, but he refused to go to jail. According to the narrative he provided police that evening, on April 26, 2005, Raven Abaroa stated that his wife had been getting ready for bed at approximately 8 p.m. when he left to play soccer with friends. He claimed that upon arriving home after 10 p.m., he saw Janet Abaroa's body bloodied by multiple stab wounds. Raven Abaroa informed the operator during a 911 call, "My wife is dead. Someone had shot her. Blood is all over the place. Her breathing has stopped." Durham police soon discovered that Abaroa's wife had been stabbed, despite his claim that she had been shot. Raven Abaroa and his son relocated to Salt Lake City, Utah, shortly after the passing of their wife. Eventually, he made the acquaintance of Vanessa Pond, a single mother whose daughter attended the same daycare center as Abaroa's kid Caden. According to Vanessa Pond, Raven appeared to be very forthright, honest, and sincere. "When I learned that he was a single father, I became extremely admiring of him." After they began dating, Pond revealed to 2020 that Abaroa had spoken about the death of his wife. She expressed how sorry she was for him and Caden. They made the decision to live together. Pond looked for more information over the internet about Raven Abaroa's first wife's passing. At the time, she told ABC News that she didn't think Raven Abaroa was innocent. She added, nevertheless, that after questioning him, he cleared my mind of any doubts. Pond claimed that he had stories about people trying to frame him, how negligent the police were, and how he kept trying to get in touch with them to find out what had been going on. 3 years following Janet Abaroa's death in the summer of 2008, Pond and Raven Abaroa tied the knot in her parents' backyard. Upon discovering he was engaged, Janet Abaroa's sisters claimed they felt compelled to get in touch with his new fiancé. Janet's sister, Dina Kendall, stated, We just wanted to make sure she was aware of the things that had been in the news about him, that she would know what she was getting into, and that we were fearful for her." "I was devastated," Pond remarked. "I just didn't want to think that he could have done this." Pond claimed that shortly after, Raven Abaroa started acting in ways that she couldn't recognize. It would not take him long to swap. Pond stated that he was capable of saying the most terrible things, and then, just as swiftly, he would apologize. According to Pond, the outbursts became physical. Pond stated, "He pulled me from the door and threw me against the wall, and then I fell." He attempted to persuade me later on that I had tripped. After only 4 months of marriage, Pond expressed her concerns about her safety. The marriage was dissolved after the couple split up. In the spring of 2009, Pond revealed her suspicions that he had murdered his first wife. Janet Abaroa's case has been assigned to a new detective. Sol, the investigator who was appointed by the Durham police, took up Janet Abaroa's investigation. Raven never kept the lie straight, Sol stated to 2020. His initial remarks to law enforcement were incoherent. Then, according to Sol, something struck him as strange as he looked through the pictures of the crime scene. "When I saw the contact case on the counter with the lid off, I suspected that there was not much of a chance the contacts were in there, which would be inconsistent with her going to bed, or, as Raven put it, sleeping on the bed." According to Sol, when authorities spoke with Janet Abaroa's relatives and acquaintances, they revealed that Janet routinely removed her contacts before going to bed during the night. This particular detail, he remarked, seemed suspicious. Subsequently, Sol stated, there shouldn't have been a struggle considering how she passed away. I mean, a stabbing doesn't happen right away. Usually there is fighting and noise and it is violent. Following his first wife's death on February 1, 2010, Raven Abaroa was charged with first-degree murder. When Janet Abaroa's body was excavated in July 2010, investigators discovered that she had worn contacts at the time of her burial. Dr. Charles Zwirling, an ophthalmologist who examined the bones, stated, "I think I washed them with sterile water after I received these fragments and cleaned them to get a better view. In fact, the material inflated in the water and returned to the contact lens's characteristic convex shape. The important discovery, however, was the finding of the numbers 1, 2, 3 on the sample A. This provided unambiguous proof that the contact lens was an AccuView. Zwirling replicated the process using sets of pig eyes in 3 different boxes to show how a contact lens would deteriorate over time if it were buried with the body. "I applied the contact lens," said Zwirling. "I did what your funeral home does. Using the same supplies, including the same linen, I got these wooden boxes and small caskets, filled them with pig eyes, and buried them in my backyard. 6 months later, I dug out the first box and proceeded." According to the final study, the contact lenses did indeed alter in the same way as the one we found, he continued. It seems that this evidence was essential in identifying a flaw in Raven Abaroa's account. Raven Abaroa shows up in court and is confronted by his second wife. Prosecutors portrayed Raven Abaroa as a domineering husband during his 2013 trial. Pond, a prosecution witness, described in her testimony how she witnessed Raven Abaroa get violent on the soccer pitch and how his aggressiveness shifted towards her. Pond claimed in court, "He just comes at you harder and harder when he sees weakness. He expressed to me how much he despised me and how little it mattered to him if I died." The prosecution's evidence against Abaroa, according to his defense team, was primarily circumstantial, and the police had disregarded the actual evidence, such as a bloody shoe print, that would have identified a different murderer. The court declared a mistrial in May 2013 after the jury was unable to make a decision, deadlocking 11-1 on a guilty conviction. Raven Abaroa took an Alford plea for voluntary manslaughter before to the commencement of his second trial in March 2014, acknowledging the existence of evidence that could have led to his conviction, but not admitting responsibility. Pond expressed his dismay at the plea deal's outcome. adding that it was more shocking than she was expecting. That is in no way fair. It's not justice. He was given a sentence of 95 to 123 months in prison by the judge. However, he was given credit for his 4 years already served in jail. Additionally, Raven Abaroa did not testify during his trial, which was applied as time served. Nevertheless, in 2014, following his sentencing, he stated in court, "I just want to say that the first time around, I wasn't given a fair trial." He told the court at the time, "I don't think I'll receive a fair trial a second time. I don't think it's worth it to run the chance of being imprisoned for the rest of my life for something I didn't do. It is the sole reason I am taking this plea, to make sure it doesn't happen. I did not murder my wife." Abaroa, who is currently 39, was freed from jail on Christmas Day in 2017. He currently resides in Utah. Starting in 1978, Christian Gerhartsreiter took on multiple identities in order to deceive and murder his way into America's upper class. Likewise, he later pretended to be a distant relative of the Rockefeller family, which lasted for 16 long years. 7 years younger than him, Sandra L. Boss was a prosperous businesswoman whom Clark Rockefeller married in 1996. Rockefeller was apparently descended from the well-known Rockefeller family, as he proudly boasted. He didn't appear to have access to the Rockefellers' wealth, though, as he never held a permanent position, and instead bounced around Wall Street from firm to firm until he became what he called a freelance banker, solving third-world debt. Rather, Clark Rockefeller used his wife's money to pay for his extravagant lifestyle. He actually had no money of his own, so he used hers to pay for his vast collection of artwork, vintage cars, and tailored outfits. And as the number of falsehoods he continued to tell grew, Boss started to think she didn't really know her husband. She was right, as her husband's identity turned out to be Christian Gerhartsreiter rather than Clark Rockefeller, who was concealing a violent and complicated history. 1961 saw the birth of Christian Gerhartsreiter in the German town of Bergen, in the Bavarian region. He migrated to the United States at the age of 17, telling immigration officials at JFK Airport that an American couple were willing to host him while he attended school there. It was just partially true, however. Though the Savio family were unaware of Gerhartsreiter's impending arrival, he had actually met the American family on a train in Germany who offered to host him if he ever found himself in Berlin, Connecticut. Nonetheless, he managed to persuade them to let him stay, pretending to be a foreign exchange student for several months after he showed up at their door. It didn't take long for Gerhartsreiter to irritate the Savio family, after he revealed to them that he was the son of European nobles and refused to perform even basic household chores like his own laundry and breakfast preparation. The family's eldest son, Edward Savio, wrote, "As he made it obvious that living in this way was beneath him, so we kicked him out." Instead of returning to Germany, Gerhartsreiter chose to live with other host families. Nonetheless, he quickly outgrew small-town New England and made the decision to become a permanent immigrant and move to California to pursue a career in acting. Gerhartsreiter changed his name to Chris Gerhardt in 1980 and started attending University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee on an audit basis. In exchange for a green card, on February 20, 1981, he married Amy Gersold, whom he met there. He disappeared a few weeks after the wedding. Upon arriving in California, he used the name Christopher Chichester, occasionally using Mountbatten as a middle name to emphasize his family history. He distributed business cards referring to himself as the 13th Baronet, complete with a fabricated family crest. He soon succeeded in making a name for himself in the upscale San Marino neighborhood of Los Angeles, and he was able to move in with Didi Sohus, an elderly and reclusive woman. He even persuaded a local TV station to grant him a public access show, while he attended classes at the University of Southern California Film School. However, when Didi's son, John Sohus, and his wife Linda moved in, things immediately became more problematic. Jonathan didn't take long to start doubting his mother's guest, as it appeared that he was spending her money on designer clothes for himself. Then, Jonathan and Linda mysteriously vanished in 1985. Gerhartsreiter claimed that they had been called upon to Europe for urgent business. Christopher Chichester disappeared shortly afterward as well. Eventually, he appeared in Connecticut, where he attempted to sell John Sohus's car without registration, using the alias Christopher Crow. Crow slipped into an executive role at a brokerage firm in Connecticut. However, he lost his job when the employer found out the Social Security number he provided them belonged to New York, son of Sam, David Berkowitz, a convicted serial killer. Prior to authorities searching for Christopher Crow in connection with the killings in 1994, after the finding of a body believed to be so in San Marino, he was able to land 2 additional high-paying positions. However, Christian Gerhartsreiter had been masquerading as Clark Rockefeller for 2 years by that point. By posing as James Frederick Mills Clark Rockefeller, from a lesser-known Rockefeller family branch in 1992, Christian Gerhartsreiter once more reenacted himself. Gerhartsreiter realized he could impress the affluent upper-class circles he moved into by adopting this identity, and in 1993, he met Sandra Boss at a cocktail party in New York City. She fell in love with the charming young Rockefeller right away, but after 10 years of marriage, Clark Rockefeller started to become more controlling and even aggressive at times, and many of the individuals in the couple's circle started to wonder if there was something off about all the claims about his background. After hiring a private investigator in 2006 to look into Rockefeller's past, Boss filed for divorce after learning that he had been lying about his identity for years. Gerhartsreiter agreed to a settlement of $800,000 and the opportunity to prevent any court employees from prying too far into his true identity. However, he also consented for only 3 annual visits with his daughter. Writer of a book on Gerhartsreiter, journalist Mark Seal, told News that everything about this man's life was a fabrication. His love for his daughter was the only genuine thing in his life, and when the unexpected divorce cost him his daughter, he started making plans to win her back. Following a visit under court supervision in Boston, Gerhartsreiter successfully eluded the social worker and abducted his daughter. Once more, Gerhartsreiter assumed a new persona and name, that of Chip Smith, a sea captain, and moved to a Baltimore apartment. Fortunately, the FBI was able to track him down. They managed to get him out of the apartment by pretending that his catamaran was sinking in the marina, according to NBC. He was surrounded by agents as soon as he walked out from his flat. Fortunately, his daughter was not harmed. For the kidnapping, Christian Gerhartsreiter, also known as Clark Rockefeller, was initially sentenced to 7 years in prison. However, authorities started assembling evidence against him for the 1985 murder of Jonathan Sohus soon after the trial. Gerhartsreiter was finally convicted of the murder in 2013 and handed a life sentence, demonstrating that even a guy with such a remarkable talent for lying cannot remain forever evading the truth. Based on court documents, the guy who was indicted for killing sex worker Emma Caldwell may be facing sexual assault and rape charges against 27 other women. In the Edinburgh High Court, Ian Packer's case was heard by Lord Beckett. Packer's attorneys entered a not guilty plea to 46 charges, which included 1 count of murder and 11 of sexual assaults that occurred over a period of 26 years. Due to difficulties arranging his transportation from Barlinnie Jail, where he's being kept on remand, the 50-year-old failed to show up in court for the hearing. Prosecutors allege that in April 2005, he choked 27-year-old Emma in the woods at Biggar, Lanarkshire. According to court documents, he is charged with assaulting 5 more women at the same isolated location. Emma, 27 years old, is said to have been murdered by Packer by strangulation after he had restrained her by seizing her wrists and applying pressure to her neck. According to the accusation, he killed her while acting with the intention of assaulting her. In addition, he is accused with trying to influence the court of justice. At the hearing, Ronnie Renacci Casey stated that his client entered a not guilty plea to all charges, and that it would take him 4 months to get lined up on the case. He said, "Mr. Packer pleads not guilty to all the charges outlined in the indictments. It will take us at least 4 months to finish our inquiries," stating that the defense is not yet prepared for trial. "Although none have been presented yet, I have a feeling that they will." According to the documents, he allegedly disposed of the naked body, mobile phone, clothing, and personal possessions of Emma in a way that is unbeknownst to the prosecutor. Then, it is said, he cleaned the inside of the car in an effort to obliterate and conceal evidence. Additionally, Packer is accused of indecently attacking Emma in August 2004 at the intersection of London Road and Green Street in Colton, Glasgow. According to court documents, 5 of Packer's claimed victims have since passed away. Prosecutors further assert that one complainant from Limefield Woods was assaulted between March 31, 2005 and September 1, 2004. As per the charge, he allegedly threatened her with a fake gun and assaulted her afterwards. There have been allegations of indecent assault at the location between January 1 and June 30, 2005, against another woman, who sadly had now passed away. Between December 1, 2005 to January 9, 2006, a different woman, who is also deceased now, was reportedly the victim of an alleged indecent assault and rape at the Woods. It was stated that between July 20, 2000 and April 1, 2005, Packer allegedly targeted a 4th victim multiple times at the Woodland. She was also reported to have been attacked around that same period in a vehicle at Pollock Park and at the entrance to a field close to Glasgow Airport. There have been allegations of an attack at Limefield Woods against a 5th lady between January 1, 2010 and April 30, 2010. Packer is accused of raping the victim prior to her injury, followed by compressing her neck and choking her. According to court documents, a similar alleged sexual offense happened there in December 2010 against the same victim. Packer is accused of assaulting 3 men between February 2008 and October 2011, as well as hitting a 15-year-old boy on the head between June 1992 and June 1993. He is also accused of committing sexual offenses against 22 additional women between July 1990 and May 2016, including indecent and libidinous conduct towards a girl aged between 14 and 15. Attorneys representing Packer attempted to get him released from detention at the Edinburgh Sheriff Appeal Court earlier this year, but William Holligan, the deputy sheriff, declined to give him bail. The judge had granted applications now that will secure the testimony of the women who have passed away will be heard. On January 15, 2024, an 11-week trial was scheduled, and the judge asked the legal teams to compromise on as much evidence as possible. This is a fairly long indictment. Therefore, I would urge both sides to agree to as much evidence as possible, according to Lord Beckett. A protracted trial is a lot to ask of a jury, and it serves little in the way of justice. An additional preliminary hearing was scheduled for June 2, 2023 at Glasgow's High Court. On April 16, 1996, James Patterson Smith called the Greater Manchester Police to report that his 17-year-old girlfriend, Kellyanne Bates, had drowned in the bathtub by an accident. Despite his assertions that he attempted to rescue her, she passed away in her beautiful years of teenage. Nevertheless, the situation was much worse than the police could have anticipated when they got to Smith's residence. Not only was Bates dead, but bloodstains throughout the house indicated that she had sustained numerous atrocious wounds prior to her death. James Patterson Smith was apprehended by the authorities without delay, and swiftly after, his story came apart. Before Kellyanne Bates passed away, Smith had been ruthlessly torturing her for weeks, as the post-mortem examination soon revealed. The pathologist subsequently stated, "I have examined nearly 600 homicide victims throughout my career, but I have never encountered injuries this severe." This is the unsettling tale of Kellyanne Bates's murder at the hands of James Patterson Smith. When Margaret Bates arrived at her home one day in Hattersley, England, she discovered Kellyanne, her 16-year-old daughter, standing in the kitchen. Kellyanne had brought her boyfriend home for the first time, without her mother knowing. The sound of footsteps on the stairs followed, indicating the entrance of James Patterson Smith, Kelly's boyfriend, into the room. When Margaret discovered Smith was in his mid-40s, she was taken aback. It goes without saying that no mother would be pleased to hear that her daughter was seeing someone significantly older than herself. For Margaret, though, it went beyond that. Smith had a very unsettling aura about him. "I didn't want my daughter to be with this man." She subsequently recalled in an interview, "I remember clearly seeing our bread knife in the kitchen and wanting to pick it up and stab him in the back." Margaret would eventually come to regret not stabbing Smith right there, since her daughter's relationship with James Patterson Smith would soon end up with him torturing her to death so ferociously that the court thereafter offered counseling to the jurors at his trial. Up until that devastating moment in the kitchen, Kellyanne Bates and her boyfriend had been keeping their relationship mostly a secret from her mother. They had first met in 1993, when Kellyanne was just 14 years old. Shortly after the kitchen meeting in November 1995, Kellyanne moved in with unemployed Smith in the neighboring Gorton. Her parents, who were dubious about the choice, agreed to it as long as she maintained regular contact with them. However, during the course of the following few months, the once gregarious daughter became more reclusive, and her parents saw bruises on her arms when she paid them a rare visit. Abusing the women he lived with was a long-standing habit of James Patterson Smith. Allegations of physical abuse was the main reason what drove an end to his first marriage. Besides that, the other women he had relationships with in the past all had similar tales to share. He even attempted to drown a girlfriend of his once, who was 15 at the time. Smith was no different with Kellyanne Bates, consistently abusing her. But after a few months, the violence escalated to a horrific degree. The whole extent of the abuse was eventually revealed on April 16, 1996, when Smith entered the Gorton police station and claimed to have inadvertently killed Kellyanne Bates during their quarrel that resulted in her drowning in the bathtub. It's unclear how precisely he described this to the police as an accident. However, Kellyanne's injuries revealed a much darker tale when the authorities eventually discovered her body inside Smith's home. Upon examining the deceased, the pathologist discovered that approximately 150 injuries had been sustained over a minimum of 1 month. Bates was starved by Smith in the final weeks of her life, and she was even restrained by her hair to a radiator. She had been repeatedly stabbed in the mouth, torso, and legs, burned with a hot iron, and strangled. Additionally, Smith had disfigured her through the use of pruning shears and other various equipment to carve out her scalp, face, and genitalia. Before he drowned her in the tub to end her life, he had even gouged out her eyeballs for at least 5 days. When the case went to trial, the prosecution showed the jury what kind of torture Bate underwent. That would have been an excruciating physical pain, resulting in pain and suffering to the extent of psychological breakdown, according to a prosecutor. Other women who had been mistreated by Smith testified during the trial, presenting a picture of a misogynist and frantically jealous man who used violence to gain control over others. Smith, meanwhile, argued that he was the true victim. It was Bates's teasing that he claimed prompted him to kill her. He said, "She put me through hell, winding me up." He went so far as to claim that she self-inflicted some of the wounds in order to discredit him. However, the jury didn't believe it, and swiftly declared James Patterson Smith, 49 years old, guilty of Kellyanne Bates's murder. He was sentenced to at least 20 years, some accounts claim 25, in prison on November 19, 1997, and he is still there as of right now. Margaret Bates, on the other hand, can't stop thinking about that moment in the kitchen when she first met Smith. She described her wish to kill him there as a baffling thought. Something so violent is not what I would ordinarily think about, and I'm wondering now whether it was some kind of sixth sense. In the 1980s in Japan, 4 teenage boys assaulted, battered, and killed Junko Furuta when she was barely 17 years old. From the perspective of Shinji Minato's parents, Junko Furuta was their son's girlfriend. It appeared as though the attractive young girl was living at their house because she spent so much time hanging around with their son. Despite their growing suspicions that her constant presence wasn't always consenting, they continued to live under the false belief that everything was all right. After all, they were afraid of their son's violent inclinations and his friends' ties to Japan's largest and most deadly organized criminal group, the Yakuza. However, in the eyes of Shinji Minato and his companions, Hiroshi Miyano, Yasuhi Watanabe, and Joe Ogawa, Junko Furuta was nothing but a sex slave and a punching bag for the most part of 44 consecutive days. Regrettably, on the final day of her abhorrent torment, she was murdered by them. Born in Misato, Saitama, Japan in 1971, Junko Furuta was a normal girl until she was abducted at the age of 17. Furuta was well known in Yashio Minami High School for being attractive, intelligent, and having good grades. She didn't smoke, drink, or take drugs, regardless of her reputation as a decent girl. She seemed to have a bright career ahead of her and was quite popular at school. But November 1988 was a turning point for everything. Her eventual kidnapper, Hiroshi Miyano, was well known as the school bully at the time, and frequently boasted about his ties to the Yakuza. Some of their classmates claimed that Miyano had a crush on Furuta and became infuriated when she rejected him. Nobody had ever dared to turn him down after all, especially once he revealed his Yakuza acquaintances to them. A few days after rejection, Miyano and Minato were prowling around a nearby park in Misato, taking advantage of naive women. Miyano and Minato were skilled gang rapists who were adept at identifying possible victims. The boys spotted Junko Furuta riding her bicycle at around 8:30 p.m. She was heading home from work at the time. Minato knocked Furuta off her bike, causing a distraction, during which Miyano intervened, posing as an innocent and worried observer. He got her up and then asked if she wanted to be escorted home, which Furuta unknowingly agreed to. She never again saw her family again after that. Furuta was taken to an abandoned warehouse by Miyano, who then informed her of his ties to the Yakuza and sexually assaulted her while threatening to kill her and her family if she made any sort of noise. Then he led her to a park where Watanabe, Ogura, and Minato were already present. There, the other boys abused her as well. After that, they sneaked her into a house that belonged to Minato's family. Furuta's parents reported their daughter missing to the police, but the boys made sure they wouldn't search for her, thereby forcing her to call home and explain that she had fled and was staying with a friend. Furuta was made to pretend to be Minato's girlfriend whenever his parents were around, but they soon saw that something wasn't quite right. Unfortunately, the fear of the Yakuza chasing them was sufficient to silence their ears, and for 44 days, Minato's parents were shockingly unaware of the true horror story that was taking place in their own house. In those 44 days, Miyano and his buddies, together with other adolescents and men whom the 4 captors knew, sexually assaulted Junko Furuta more than 400 times. They would torture her by forcing iron bars, scissors, skewers, fireworks, and even a lit bulb into her genitals, ruining her internal organs and making it unbearable for her to properly urinate or defecate. The lads forced her into doing horrible things, like as eating live cockroaches, masturbating in front of them, and drinking her own pee while they weren't raping her. Her lifeless body was pounded with iron rods, bamboo sticks, and golf clubs while she hung from the ceiling. Her eyelids and genitals had been charred with cigarettes, lighters, and hot wax, and the torture continued until Furuta drew her last breath. The terrible torture and subsequent murder of Junko Furuta are among the most tragic aspects of the story, since it could have all been avoided. Furuta's condition was reported to the police twice, but at neither occasion did they take any action. The first time a boy who had been invited to Miyano's house by Miyano, went home after witnessing Furuta and told his brother about what had been going on. The brother subsequently made the decision to inform his parents, who in turn called the police. When the authorities arrived at the Minato family's home, they were informed that there was no girl around. The cops were apparently fulfilled with the response, as they never returned to the house. The second time, Furuta phoned the police on her own, but the boys caught her before she could say anything. Reassured that the previous call had been an error, Miyano contacted the police back. The authorities never inquired further. Furuta was then punished by the boys for phoning the police, putting lighter fluid all over her legs, and setting her on fire. Finally, on January 4, 1989, Junko Furuta was murdered by her captors. She supposedly defeated the guys in Mahjong and was tortured to death by the lads after they became agitated. Fearful of facing murder charges, they placed her corpse in a 55-gallon drum, filled it with concrete, and then lowered it onto a cement truck. They assumed for a long time that they would not be caught. On an additional charge of gang rape, the police detained Miyano and Ogura 2 weeks later. When the police brought up the subject of an open murder investigation during Miyano's interrogation, Miyano assumed they were talking about the killing of Junko Furuta and that Ogura must have already admitted to the crime. As a result, Miyano told them the location of Furuta's body. In the end, Miyano had inadvertently turned himself in for Furuta's murder, and the case the police had been referring to had nothing to do with her. Within a few days, all 4 boys were apprehended. However, with all the evidence pointing to them and their gruesome torment of Junko Furuta, the penalties announced for the boys were shockingly mild. 20 years was the sentence given to Hiroshi Miyano, 5 to 9 years to Shinji Minato, 5 to 10 years to Joe Ogura, and 5 to 7 years to Yasuhi Watanabe. They received low sentences because at the time of Junko Furuta's murder, they were considered as minors, though it is also commonly thought that their ties to the Yakuza played a role. If the boys had been a few years older, or the case had gone to a different court, they most likely would have received the death penalty. Ultimately, though, the 4 people who killed Furuta were released from jail. It's thought that Watanabe is the only one who hasn't committed another crime after being freed. Many people in Japan still believe that justice has not been served in Furuta's case, and sadly, it doesn't appear that it ever will be. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of unsolved cases.